Hello, be sure to get through the story to the end and in the comments write your opinion, and subscribe to the channel, put a like. They say you should always trust your instincts. I used to think that was the kind of advice people threw around when they were trying to justify acting impulsively. Gut feeling, vibes, whatever. I thought I was too logical for that kind of nonsense. But that Saturday night, that was the night my instincts screamed at me, and for the first time in my life I actually listened. Sarah had been planning to go to a girls-only party at her friend Jenna's place. Nothing unusual there. Jenna had just bought this old countryside house. Kind of rustic, kind of charming, the kind of place that looks great on Instagram stories with fairy lights and wine glasses held up to sunset skies. Sarah was excited about it all week. She kept mentioning how it was going to be a much-needed reset, and how it would just be her and the girls, no guys, no pressure. Wine, music, dancing, maybe some fire pit time. It sounded pretty wholesome, to be honest. I wasn't invited, and that didn't bug me. Not at first. She asked if I could pick her up around midnight. So I don't have to worry about calling an Uber from the woods, she joked. I agreed, of course. I always did things like that for her. She could text me at 3 a.m. and I'd get out of bed without complaint. That's just how we worked, or how I thought we worked anyway. But around 10 p.m., something shifted. I couldn't focus on anything. I was just sitting on the couch, flipping through Netflix like a zombie, but nothing grabbed me. My chest felt tight, not like I was having a panic attack or anything dramatic, but this weird, subtle anxiety started to build. Felt like static in my brain. Faint, but constant. I kept telling myself I was just being dumb. Maybe it was too much caffeine, or maybe I was just restless from doing nothing all day. Still, the feeling wouldn't leave. I must have checked the clock 5 times in 10 minutes. Eventually, I just stood up and grabbed my hoodie, telling myself I'd go out early, clear my head, maybe find a gas station coffee to K*LL time. Something about waiting until midnight felt unbearable, like I'd explode if I just sat there any longer. I didn't even text Sarah to say I was coming early. I figured I'd just chill in the area, maybe park a little ways down the road and listen to music until the party started winding down. The drive out was uneventful. Rural roads, lots of trees, barely any streetlights. I knew the way, though. I'd been to Jenna's house before, once when she hosted a birthday thing for her dog. Yeah, a dog. Sarah thought it was cute. I thought it was weird, but whatever. As I got closer, I noticed how eerily quiet it was out there. Even with the windows rolled up, it felt like the kind of silence that pressed in on you. Just the crunch of gravel under the tires and the faint hum of the engine. When I finally saw the glow of Jenna's house in the distance, warm lights through the trees, music faint enough to just make out, I slowed down and pulled off onto the edge of an old dirt path, right next to this half-collapsed barn. It looked like it had been sitting there since the Civil War, leaning to one side like it was too tired to stand up straight anymore. But it gave me a decent place to park without being seen from the main driveway. I led the engine and just sat there for a while, letting the silence settle. It was peaceful in a way, despite the low buzz of anxiety I couldn't shake. I cracked the window, let the cool night air in. Out here, away from the city, you could actually see stars. That alone was almost worth the drive. But then I felt it. That all too human, inconvenient urge. I had to pee. Of course I did. There I was, trying to be low-key and introspective, and suddenly my bladder decided it had other plans. At first, I looked around for a spot near the barn, but the area was too exposed. Plus, the idea of peeing next to some haunted-looking wood structure didn't sit right with me. I figured it wasn't that weird to just slip into the house quickly, use the bathroom, and dip out. I mean, I was Sarah's ride. I wasn't some random stranger, and I wasn't planning to hang out or snoop around, just in, out, done. So I got out of the car, walked up the gravel road, and cut through the trees until I found myself near the side entrance of Jenna's house. The music was louder now, something bass-heavy, with the kind of beat that makes you instinctively move your shoulders. Laughter spilled out between songs. That kind of high-pitched, slightly tipsy laughter that fills the air when people are feeling themselves. I could hear someone yelling, "Group pic! Get your glasses!" Through the noise, I took a breath and stepped inside. That was the moment it started. The moment I crossed from outside to inside, from calm to chaos. I didn't realize it at the time, but looking back, it was like opening a door I couldn't shut again. Inside, the house was packed. Not like wild frat party packed, but there were definitely more people than I expected for a small girl's night. I slipped through the kitchen, trying not to draw attention to myself. People were everywhere, on the floor, on couches, crowded around the island counter where 3 bottles of wine sat half empty. I recognized a few faces from Sarah's Instagram. Her coworker Olivia, who once called me Mark with the boring job, even though we'd never spoken. Her college friend Tasha, the one who always gave off this chaotic energy. They were all here. Nobody really noticed me. Everyone was too wrapped up in their own little scenes, holding wine glasses like accessories and posing for selfies with those spontaneous expressions that probably took 5 tries to nail. I kept my head down, walking like I belonged there. I figured I'd find a bathroom near the hallway behind the kitchen. Just as I was about to turn down it, I heard something. Laughing. A low int asterisk mate laugh that stopped me in my tracks. It wasn't just anyone's laugh. It was Sarah's. Something about the way she laughed in that moment. Soft, breathy, like she was trying not to get caught. It sent a chill through me. I turned my head, and that's when I saw her. I didn't mean to look. I really didn't. But there she was, clear as day, sitting on the edge of the fireplace hearth, leaning close to some guy in a light-colored shirt I didn't recognize. He was laughing too. His hand rested on her leg, just above the knee, casual like he belonged there. And her fingers, they were gently toying with the collar of his shirt, running over it absent-mindedly like she'd done it 100 times before. My breath caught in my throat. I don't know how long I stood there, half hidden behind the doorway, staring like an idiot, long enough to memorize everything. The angle of her smile, the way she leaned into him, close enough that their foreheads almost touched. The unspoken vibe between them, easy, comfortable, too comfortable. That wasn't a girl catching up with an old friend. That wasn't someone having harmless fun. That was something else. I hadn't meant to come inside. I hadn't meant to see anything. But now that this was burned into my brain, I knew there was no going back. I didn't move. Couldn't. I stayed right there, half concealed behind the doorframe, my body rooted to the floor like some terrified observer in my own life. I wasn't supposed to see this. That thought kept hammering at me. I wasn't supposed to be here. I wasn't supposed to see her like this. But I was. And I did. I reached for my phone without even thinking. My hands were slow, clumsy, like they were moving underwater. I fumbled it for a second, cursed under my breath, then finally got the camera up. I didn't zoom in or try to be clever. I just hit record. The angle was crooked and dark, but it didn't matter. What mattered was the way Sarah's body curved into his. The way her hand slid along his chest when she laughed at something he said. The way he leaned in close and said something directly into her ear. And she smiled, not just any smile, but that smile. The one she used to give me when we were tangled up in bed, or laughing over late-night takeout, or when she'd sneak up behind me at the sink and wrap her arms around my waist. The kind of smile you don't give someone unless there's something real behind it. They weren't kissing, not yet. Not touching in any overtly scandalous way. But it didn't matter. You could see it in the way they looked at each other. In how she tucked her hair behind her ear and tilted her head toward him. In how his hand moved in slow, lazy circles on her thigh. It wasn't just flirting. It was familiarity. It was connection. She stood up, suddenly, her wine glass still in one hand. She reached for his with the other and gave it a soft tug. He followed her without question. Like this wasn't the first time she'd done this exact thing. They moved through the room, unnoticed by everyone else, like a current slipping under the surface. I followed at a distance, not fully sure what I was doing anymore. My legs moved on their own. My brain wasn't even trying to stop me. It was like I had left my own body and was just watching everything happen from 100 feet above. They went through a side door, down a narrow set of stairs I hadn't even noticed before. I hesitated for a second, then crept after them. My heart was pounding, loud enough that I was sure someone would hear it. But the noise of the party upstairs covered everything. Music, laughter, glasses clinking. Nobody cared what I was doing. Nobody even knew I was there. At the bottom of the stairs was what looked like a converted wine cellar. It was warm, dimly lit, cozy in a way that felt too intentional. A couch, a rug, some candles, a little Bluetooth speaker playing something soft and jazzy in the background. Felt like a date. Felt like their place. She sat on the couch, curling one leg underneath her, leaning back like she owned the room. He sat down beside her, their knees touching. He draped an arm around her shoulders, and she didn't flinch or pull away. She leaned in. I couldn't hear what they were saying from my spot at the top of the steps, but I didn't need audio to understand what was happening. She looked at him the way you look at someone when you want them to make the next move. And then he did. He leaned in, slow and careful, his forehead brushing against hers, their lips just a breath apart. She didn't stop him. I stopped recording. I didn't want to see what came next. I already knew. Maybe they hadn't kissed yet. Maybe they would have stopped. Maybe she would have come to her senses. But I didn't believe that. Not for a second. Not after seeing the way she looked at him, the way they moved around each other like this was something they'd rehearsed before. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment mistake. This wasn't one too many glasses of wine and a dumb decision. This was practiced, comfortable, familiar. This was a pattern. I stepped back, careful not to make a sound, and slipped back up the stairs. I felt sick, physically nauseous. My hands were sweating. My chest was tight. I didn't know what to do or where to go. I didn't even want to breathe the same air as them. I stumbled through the kitchen again, dodging a group of women posing for a selfie in front of the fridge, and slipped out the side door into the cold night. The air hit me like a slap. I bent over, hands on my knees, trying to steady my breathing. Everything felt like it was spinning. I couldn't even process what I'd seen. Couldn't believe that the same woman who kissed me goodbye that evening and told me she loved me was now downstairs in another man's arms, looking at him like he was her entire world. I walked back to my car without thinking. My legs felt numb, but I made it. Slammed the door shut. Sat there in the dark, engine off, phone still in my hand, screen glowing with the last frame of the video. Played it again. Not because I wanted to torture myself. I just needed to be sure. I needed to confirm that I hadn't imagined it. That it wasn't just a misunderstanding or my insecurities getting the better of me. I needed to look at the evidence and tell myself I wasn't crazy. And there it was. Her hand on his knee, his arm around her. The way she leaned in, like she was home. I sat there for maybe 15 minutes, just watching it loop. Watching her smile. Watching him touch her. Watching everything I thought I knew about Sarah Byrne right in front of me. Then I opened our group chat. The one with our mutual friends. The same one we used to coordinate weekend plans, birthdays, random memes. I uploaded the video. No caption. No angry message. No explanation. Just the video. My hand hovered over the send button for a moment. My thumb shaking. Then I hit send. I watched as it uploaded. Watched the 3 little dots appear one by one. Watched the reactions start to pour in. I leaned back in the seat, closed my eyes, and let it all crash down around me. I didn't drive off right away. I just sat there, still parked by the side of that old barn, my hands clenched around the steering wheel. My phone lit up with notifications, name after name reacting to the video. Some of the messages came in fast and blunt. WTF is this? Is this tonight? Dude, are you okay? Others were slower, more cautious, like people were trying to tiptoe around what they'd just seen. I didn't respond to any of them. What was there to say? The video said it all. I didn't need to write a paragraph explaining how it felt to watch the person you love melt into someone else's arms. All I had to do was hit record. Another notification came through, and this time it was from Sarah. First a message, then another, and another. They came in one after the other like a drumbeat, each one more frantic than the last. Mark, where are you? Please answer me. I can explain. I'm sorry. I didn't open any of them. Couldn't. Just seeing her name pop up on my screen made my stomach twist. It didn't feel real. None of it did. There's a kind of numbness that comes after a blow like that. Not just sadness or anger, but a kind of emptiness, like your entire emotional system just shuts down to keep you from combusting. I finally started the car and drove. I didn't even know where I was going. Just away. Away from that house. Away from her. Away from the night I couldn't unsee. The roads blurred past in streaks of moonlight and headlights. The inside of the car was dead silent except for the occasional ding of a new message. Always her. I didn't even realize I'd driven to our apartment until I pulled into the parking lot. The lights in our place were off, which made sense. She was still out. Or maybe she had left Jenna's and was already on her way here, expecting to find me waiting with questions. Maybe even forgiveness. But she wouldn't find either. I went inside, locked the door behind me, and dropped onto the couch like someone had pulled the plug on my body. My phone buzzed again. Another message. This one I opened. It was short, just 2 words. Please talk. I stared at the screen for a long time, thumbs hovering, the urge to unload everything boiling just beneath the surface. But nothing came out. I set the phone down, face down, and stared at the ceiling. I kept thinking about that wine cellar, about the way she had looked at him, about how her body language had shifted the moment she was next to him. Like that was the version of herself she'd been saving, and I hadn't seen it in weeks. Months, maybe. It all made sense now. The weird distance between us lately, the last-minute plans, the half-hearted kisses, the sudden, inexplicable arguments that would pop up out of nowhere and end with her storming out. I told myself it was stress, or work, or that we were just going through a rough patch. But it wasn't that. It was this. It had always been this. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there in the dark, listening to the refrigerator hum and the occasional car passing outside. At one point I stood up, walked to the window, and stared out at the lot. Her car wasn't there yet. A tiny part of me hoped it never would be. But around 1:30 a.m., headlights swept across the living room walls. I stepped back instinctively, out of view, and peeked through the curtain. Her car. She was home. I backed into the hallway, out of sight, just as the front door opened. "Mark?" she called softly, like she didn't want to wake a baby that didn't exist. I didn't say anything, just waited. She stepped into the living room, her footsteps slow and hesitant. Her heels clicked against the hardwood, then paused. I imagined her scanning the dark room, trying to spot me. I heard her whisper my name again, quieter this time, like she already knew I wasn't going to answer. Eventually, she flicked on the light. I was leaning in the hallway, arms crossed, my expression blank. When her eyes met mine, she froze like I'd punched the air out of her lungs. She opened her mouth, probably to say something rehearsed, some soft, wounded apology she thought might do the trick. But I cut her off before she could make a sound. "How long?" My voice was low, cold. Not angry, just done. She blinked, then looked down like the floor might hold the answers. "Mark, I didn't ask for sorry. I asked how long." She hesitated. Her hands fidgeted at her sides. I watched her body collapse in on itself, trying to look small, pitiful. But I wasn't in the mood for pity. "Since October," she finally said, barely above a whisper. I let out a breath. October. That was 6 months ago. Halloween. I remembered that night. We'd gone to a bar with her friends, and she spent the entire time glued to her phone. I asked her if she was okay. She said she had a headache. That was the same night she started sleeping with someone else. "Who is he?" I asked. She looked up at me, face pale, eyes shining with tears. "It doesn't matter." "It matters to me," I said, stepping forward. "Who is he?" "His name is Aaron," she said. "He's just someone I met through Jenna. He's not anyone. He doesn't matter." I laughed. It was short, bitter, and empty. "He mattered enough to follow you into a basement tonight." She winced. I walked past her, toward the door. I couldn't be in that room anymore. Not with her standing there, looking like she still thought she could salvage this. Like she thought saying the right combination of words would rewind the last 6 months. "I'm not staying here tonight," I said. "Mark, wait. Can we at least talk? Can we please just Just sit down and... No, I said, cutting her off again. You made a choice. Now you live with it. And with that, I walked out. Drove off again. No destination this time. Just the open road and a mind full of noise. Somewhere behind me, Sarah was probably crying on the couch, maybe even typing another long message I'd never read. But she didn't understand. There was no fixing this. There wasn't even anything left to break. By morning, my phone had over 30 unread messages. Most from Sarah, the rest from our mutual friends. I didn't bother opening any of them. I knew what they'd say, or at least the general tone of them. Shock, confusion, sympathy, maybe a few people trying to play neutral. The thing about exposure like that is it forces people to pick a side, and some will try really hard to stand in the middle until it's inconvenient. I wasn't ready to face any of it yet. Not Sarah. Not the questions. Not the well-meaning but completely useless advice. So I stayed at my buddy Jake's place. I hadn't even warned him. I just showed up around 2 in the morning, and when he opened the door and saw my face, he didn't ask a single question. Just stepped aside, nodded toward the couch, and tossed me a pillow. Now the morning light was creeping in through his windows, and everything in me felt heavy. My bones, my stomach, my chest. The emotional hangover was worse than any night of drinking. I hadn't slept, hadn't eaten, hadn't cried. I just sat there replaying every moment of the last 6 months in my head, searching for the signs I missed. There were plenty. The way she started avoiding date nights. How she suddenly had plans every other weekend, most of which didn't involve me. The way her texts got shorter, her kisses quicker, her smiles less sincere. I thought we were in a rough patch, that it would pass. I thought that's what real relationships were, up and down, ebb and flow. I didn't realize she had already stepped out of ours and into someone else's. Jake walked into the living room just after 8, scratching his head, his hair a mess. He looked at me, then the phone I was still clutching in my hand. You gonna open any of those? He asked. Nope. He didn't press. He walked to the kitchen, started the coffee, and we sat in silence for a while. Eventually, I told him everything. Not because I needed advice, but because I needed to get it out. I needed someone else to know what had happened so it didn't live only in my chest. He listened. Really listened. Didn't interrupt. Just sat there, his jaw tightening more and more as the story went on. When I finished, he just said, "She's a F*** and idiot." And weirdly, that helped. A few hours later, I went back to our apartment. I waited until I was sure she'd be at work. I didn't want to see her. Didn't want to hear the rehearsed explanations or the "it didn't mean anything" lines I knew she was dying to say. I just wanted to gather some stuff and figure out my next steps. Walking in was surreal. Everything looked the same. Couch in the same spot. Our jackets still hanging on the hooks by the door. Her favorite blanket draped over the back of the sofa. It felt like the aftermath of a crime scene. Too normal for what had happened. Like the room hadn't gotten the memo. I packed a duffel bag with the basics, clothes, toothbrush, laptop charger, and grabbed a few things I knew I'd need if I didn't come back. The photo on the nightstand caught my eye. It was us, from a trip to Seattle. I remembered that day perfectly. Pike Place Market. Coffee. Her hand in mine. Her smile. I stared at it for a long moment, then flipped it face down. I wasn't going to let nostalgia make me stupid. Before I left, I sat down at the kitchen table and opened my laptop. I started pulling up her social media accounts. Not to check what she'd posted, but to see who had unfollowed her. The fallout had already **n. People were commenting under her latest post. Something from 2 days ago where she was posing with a glass of wine and a fake candid smile. Someone had simply commented, "Bold move." Another had posted a series of eye emojis and a popcorn gif. Subtle but brutal. She hadn't posted anything since I dropped the video. The messages were still coming in. I muted the chat. Before logging off, I opened a folder on my desktop and titled it Closure. Then I dragged the video into it, along with a couple of **ts I'd taken from the footage. I wasn't planning to use them for anything, but I wanted to have them, just in case. The last thing I did before heading out the door was take off the key from my ring. I placed it on the counter and walked out without a sound. Later that evening, Jake and I grabbed a drink at a bar downtown. I needed to get out of my own head, and being surrounded by the noise of other people helped. For a while, at least. Halfway through my second beer, Jake nodded toward the end of the bar. That her? I turned. It was Sarah. She was standing by the entrance, scanning the room like she was looking for someone. Her eyes landed on me, and she froze. I could see the panic rise in her chest even from across the room. She looked like she wanted to turn around and bolt but couldn't bring herself to move. I looked away. I didn't wave, didn't acknowledge her. I just turned my body slightly, shifting my focus back to the drink in front of me. Jake watched her for a beat, then said, "She's walking this way." I didn't move. I just braced. "Mark," she said, her voice tentative, fragile. I turned to face her. She looked rough, like she hadn't slept either. Her eyes were red. Her makeup was minimal, which was rare. She used to say she never left the house without mascara. Tonight she had nothing on but regret. "Can we talk?" she asked. Jake stood up. "I'll give you guys a minute," he said, placing his beer down and nodding toward the back. She waited until he was gone, then sat on the bar stool next to mine. "I'm sorry," she said, like that was supposed to cover it. I didn't say anything. "I don't know what I was thinking," she continued. "I messed up. I know that." Still, I stayed quiet. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said. That one almost made me laugh. "You didn't mean to hurt me?" I finally said, turning toward her. "You had a 6-month affair. You planned nights around it. Lied to my face. Smiled at me while you were screwing someone else. Don't stand here and act like this was some accident." She flinched. "I don't know what I want," she said finally. "That's the truth. I didn't know how to tell you I was unhappy. I didn't know how to leave. So I ran from it instead." I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time I didn't feel love or hate. I felt nothing. "You didn't run from anything," I said. "You ran to something, and now that it fell apart, you're looking back." She didn't respond, just nodded slowly, tears building in her eyes. "I don't need to hear any more," I said, standing. "Whatever you're looking for, you won't find it here." I left her sitting there, alone at the bar, staring at the drink she hadn't even ordered. Back at Jake's, I felt something I hadn't felt in days. Relief.